Well, hello everybody, my name's Louise Savage of Louise Savage Muses. Welcome to my channel if you've just joined for the first time, and welcome back if you haven't. So today I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in July, and it's been a cracking reading month for me. I always read more at this time of year. School has broken up, etc, etc, so I just get a bit more time for reading and a bit more time for relaxing. So first up is Salvage the Bones by Jesmyn. Hope you can see that. There's a bit of reflection on it. Fabulous cover, actually. I really love it. I love this book. I read Sing Unburied Sing quite a long time ago, which I think was her first novel. No, maybe this was. Not sure. And so I was really looking forward to reading another novel by her. And it's equally, if not more stunning, I would say. So it's set in Mississippi. It's on the build up to a hurricane, a devastating hurricane. So it's based around, I suppose, a true historic event. And Hurricane Katrina, I think it is. And Esh is a young girl, I think she's about 15, growing up in poverty with a father who is a drinker, and lots of brothers, and surrounded by her brother's friends as well. And so she's the only female. Her mother died, and it's a story of her survival in many ways in this kind of male atmosphere. It's also a story of a struggle against poverty. Her body in many ways is not her own. It's shared with a lot of the young men around her, not her brothers or her father, I hasten to add. And she's sort of growing up and discovering this world, and you've got the threat of the hurricane, but there are also lots of other things that are threatening her security as well. And the other thing that I found really fascinating about it was that one of her brothers, Skeeter, has a pit bull, I think it is, a fighting dog. And it's called China, which of course has all sorts of connotations of delicacy and fragility. And Skeeter looks after this dog in a way that nobody else in the household is looked after, because he knows ultimately he could make money from fighting this dog. And she also has puppies, and the way the puppies are treated and the descriptions of the puppies, etc, etc, are really interesting. So there's this kind of parallel narrative, if you like. There's the narrative of Esh and her struggles, and there's also the narrative of the dog China, which is almost like a sort of contrasting metaphor, I think, for Esh's experiences. And I just found it beautiful to read. I'm not I like dogs, but I've never owned a dog. I'm not sort of a dog person, but I found the narrative around the dog really interesting, and the descriptions of the way that the dogs were being kept and looked after as well. I thought it was fantastic, this novel. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's probably one of my favourite reads so far this year. So there you go, Jesmyn, Salvage the Bones. Next up, I read Sally Rooney's Conversation with Friends, which I think was her first novel. In fact, I know it was. So she wrote Normal People, which some of you might have come across, I'm sure, and may well have seen the beautiful adaptation for TV. And Conversations with Friends is currently on telly in the UK. And I have watched the first couple of episodes since I read the novel, and it doesn't disappoint. I think it's a really faithful representation of the novel. It's not grating on me. So this tells the story of two young women, Frances and Bobby. Frances is an aspiring poet. They've had a relationship in the past, the two of them, but have sort of gone beyond that. They've got a very deep friendship, very deep. And they become acquainted through their poetry with Melissa and Nick. And Nick is an actor, a very well-known actor, very attractive man, and the story develops into this kind of tangled web of friendship, and also there are physical relationships that develop between them, sexual relationships. And I really, really enjoyed this. I've sort of steered away from Sally Rooney recently because I know that Beautiful World, Where Are You? Her recent novel has had really mixed reception. And I'm really glad that the appearance of the TV series prompted me to read this now, because I think she really captures that kind of arty, the world of art, the world of artistic people, creative people, kind of middle class tensions. It also tells a fantastic narrative about Frances's physical makeup, because she actually has a physical problem, which I won't go into because if you haven't read it, it'll spoil it. I don't want to put any spoilers in, but there is something that happens to her body which is not written about enough, and so in many ways you could read this as a feminist text, and that whole idea of having, how much do we actually have control over our bodies, how much should we have control over our bodies, and how much we share. There's a lot in this novel as well about communication. If you can't see somebody, how does communicating via text, via email, via digital technology, can it actually replace face-to-face contact? So yeah, I thought it was really interesting, really, really enjoyed it, read it very quickly, gobbled it up, liked the sort of snatches of dialogue as well. There are some sections of the text which read like a play script because they're text exchanges. Yeah, really liked it. Next up, this is a book I've been wanting to get to for ages, The Beekeeper of Aleppo by Christy Lefteri. And I've been looking forward to this for a long time because I love stories that are set in the Middle East. This tells the story of an adult couple who are married and living in Aleppo in Syria, and then the war happens, and ultimately they have to flee Syria and make that awful journey across Greece, across Turkey, and finally the destination they're aiming for is the UK. They've got friends who've already made it to the UK, and this is a real gut-wrencher of a novel. The characters are beautiful. The empathy that you feel for them is really, really well evoked, and I liked the simplicity of the narrative style. It's not fancy, it's not there's nothing, it's very different to Jesmyn Ward. It's not poetic in that way, but I know that Christy Lefteri spent time working on humanitarian, working with various charities, dealing with the refugee crisis in Europe. So I think she's, obviously taken lots and lots of true stories and turned them into this novel. And I think it's worth reading just for that reason alone, that it reminds us of how devastating their experiences are. Very few of us, very few people ever truly experience the kind of tragedy that they are suffering, and the descriptions of them being transported in the boat and the psychological impact of what they're experiencing is really well told. And one of the things I loved about it was the fact that there's been a complete breakdown in communication between husband and wife here, purely because of the horrible things that they've experienced. So, and I think that's really realistic at a time when the person you need to turn to most is the person that you can't turn to emotionally, psychologically. I think she looks into that really well. I thought it was going to be a page turner, and it wasn't. I found it quite slow in places, and that may be something to do with the time that I was reading at. So it didn't set me on fire in the way I expected it to. And I actually perhaps think that's because I loved Manjit Man's book, The Crossing. You'll have heard me talk about that before if you've watched my channel. I thought that was an amazing book. and it tells a sort of similar story, although a different generation of people. So I think, you know, maybe that's why I was slightly disappointed with this. But I can understand totally why it's been a bestseller, and I know that, you know, she's written some other novels since which have been really popular. So that was The Beekeeper of Aleppo. Okay, next up is Pandora's Jar by Natalie Haynes. Now, I have been reading this book for a long time. That's not because I found it hard going at all. It's completely the reverse. It's because it's the sort of book that I like to really dwell on and mull over and ponder, and I'm sure I'll reread it before too long. So this is, in many ways, a series of essays, I suppose, is how I'd describe it. Natalie Haynes is a comedian and classicist. I think she's on a par with Stephen Fry. She's got the most fantastic intellect. She researches her writing so thoroughly. And as a classicist myself, I really enjoy her take on the ancient world and the idea of her trying to put back or revocalise the thoughts and opinions and attitudes of women from the ancient world, and also, you know, open up that feminine gaze that has been so lacking in classical learning through the centuries. So each essay, each chapter is about a different woman from or female character from Greek mythology, and I just think it's wonderful. I love the way she tells you the narrative of that character within the ancient world. So you get the myth, you get the story, you get different versions of the myth, but she'll then reflect on the way that that character has been received through the centuries, and she'll take a really good angle, a really interesting or unusual angle on that character. And I loved every single one of these essays, really informative, really sort of made me rethink some of my attitudes and opinions towards these women who've lived in my head for a very, very long time. So, you know, thank you, Natalie, for that. She's just, I think Natalie is an absolute gem. And I think she just goes from strength to strength to strength. Beautiful, beautiful book. And finally, as you may know, I'm a big fan of children's and teenage literature, and I read Odd and the Frost Giants. I actually read this to a class at school, and I hadn't read it for the first time. And it's by Neil Gaiman, who, you know, again, I think is an absolute genius. And it's just a beautiful story of a young Viking boy called Odd, who is odd because he's lame. He walks with a stick. He doesn't feel loved, and he runs away from home. And he meets these characters: a bear, a fox, and an eagle. And they take him on this heroic adventure to try and remove the frost giants from Asgard. And it's just heartwarming. It's really lovely. It's a child's perspective, but it's mature and interesting, and I think any young person reading this, it would give them, you know, no matter what their problems are, it would give them confidence. It's a story of resilience. It's a story of not saying no. It's a story about how anybody, you know, with a little bit of bravery, a little bit of courage, can conquer. So yeah, again, really beautiful book. Loved it. So I've had a great reading month. And I think August has just started. I'm in the middle of reading Trish Delaney's Before My Actual Heart Breaks. And again, I'm absolutely romping through that. I think it's a gorgeous book, but I'll talk more about that when I've finished reading it. Anyway, thank you very much. It's been a short catch up today. I'm off to take both my adult children to have tattoos done this afternoon. So yeah, don't quite know what I'm going to do while they're doing that. I don't think I'll be getting one myself. But anyway, the only sort of sobering thing about it is that they're both having tattoos of classical beings. One's having Laocoon from Virgil's Aeneid, and the other one is having Artemis. So I suppose, you know, that says it all really, doesn't it? Anyway, take care, have a lovely summer, whatever you're doing, and speak to you all again soon. Bye.